Resident Evil: The Final Chapter is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and stars Milla Jovovich, Ali Larter, and Ian Glenn, and is the sixth film in the popular Resident Evil franchise that started back in 2002. Now, a little backstory. The film series, as we know, is based on the popular series of games by Capcom that started out in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I'll admit, when I grew up, I used to play a lot of the Resident Evil games, especially the first three games on the PlayStation. And the story was about a virus that breaks out originally in this mansion by a secret organization called the Umbrella Corporation. And there was a team that was sent in to infiltrate what's happening. And along the way, they encounter zombies and other kinds of all kinds of monsters across the mansion, and then the later games across cities and other areas. And so, getting into the game series, I actually was curious with the first film when it came out, because it actually sparked my interest of how much you can do with taking that concept and turning it into a video game form. And when it came out, I actually really enjoyed the first Resident Evil film. I actually thought that as a claustrophobic zombie film, I thought it was pretty good, and I actually thought that as far as video game adaptations, it was actually one of the better ones I enjoyed, that actually stuck close, at least to the core concept of the games. So I really do enjoy the first one. I actually own it on DVD, and the rest of the films I'm kind of hit and miss with. I like the second one alright, but it was just just okay. The third one I actually did enjoy with the whole Mad Max feel, and I also enjoyed parts of that revolving with the secret doctor known as Dr. Isaacs, who also returns in this new film. And the next one, Afterlife, I wasn't a big fan of that much, but I thought it was it was my least favorite of the series. And then when 5 came out, Retribution, I actually got really into it again, because it actually got me into what was happening with the story of how far Alice was going. And because in the original film, Alice, played by Milla Jovovich, was a woman who was pretty much the focus throughout the series, and as the series went on, you start to learn more about her, that she was actually enhanced with the T-virus. And so with this one, it actually kind of got me curious, because pretty much what they're trying to do was they were trying to end everything all at once, for everything finally, and bring everything full circle. So it actually got me curious how far they were going to do with the series that's led up to this point. And I'll tell you right now, I've seen some bad movies that end on a down note, and movies that end on a franchise that have ended terribly. This, to me, is the worst final film of the franchise I've seen since Saw 3D. And everybody knows how bad that movie was. Here are my major cons of this film. Okay, I'm just going to get this out of the way. I'll get to my pros later. First of all, the direction of this film is so sloppy. This to me, has the worst editing of the series so far, and there is not one action scene in this film that I liked at all. Every scene kept pissing me off with all the quick cuts and all the fucking jump scares that kept coming out left and right, and the really shitty 3D that kept pissing me off and was giving me almost a headache. And another thing, too, that really made me mad is throughout the film, we see characters that are coming along the way like the other films, and we get them introduced and they're just killed off fast. We don't get any build-up, we don't get any characterization that they even feel for these characters at all, and I'm just sitting there like, I don't fucking care. And then another problem I have is a lot of the weird parts of the film involves a lot of shaky cam. Now, I don't mind shaky cam when it's done right, for example, like in the Bourne movies, and at least probably in some parts of the first Taken movie. But here, this is some of the worst this is the really shitty shaky cam that I saw in Taken 3, where everything moves at such a fast angle that you can't keep up with it. And it doesn't help that it's in 3D too, because when you watch it in 3D, a lot of the scenes where they're fighting, it's all so fast you can't even blink an eye and it goes by so quick. And that really pissed me off too, because throughout the majority of this entire film, every scene is an action scene, action scene, action scene, and then for like that small part that was involved with the story, it takes sort of a break, but it's constantly moving at such a fast pace that it's hard to keep up with. Now, this one pretty much has a story involving where Alice, it's pretty much at the end of the last film, Retribution, where the whole world is pretty much almost dead, and she's on her way to try to stop Umbrella for good. And this one, she discovers that there's another hologram for the Red Queen, like we saw in the last film, that shows that there is actually an antivirus that can be able to cure the entire world. And so her journey goes to look for the antivirus, while at the same time, she comes across familiar faces such as Wesker, who's also popular in the video games, and from the other two movies, who was the bad guy. And we also get reintroduced to Dr. Isaacs, who they do explain why he comes back, because if you remember, spoiler for those who haven't seen it, in the third film he died. In this film, they actually do explain why he comes back, so I thought that was unique of what they did. And so Alice has to go on her journey across, and she meets up with a group of survivors played by Ali Lauder and Robbie Roos and a few others. And Ali Lauder also played in the previous Resident Evil film, Afterlife, where she played Claire Redfield, who was also from the games. So this film is still doing like the other films did, where they're bringing in fan service characters that were popular from the games, such as Claire Redfield and Albert Wesker. And to be honest, they don't do shit in this film. Like, to me, this is probably the most underused I've seen of Albert Wesker in a movie since Afterlife, since the last film. It seemed like the most screen time that you would get from this character was from Afterlife. Because here, he doesn't do shit. Like, Lily, we see scenes of him talking to Dr. Isaacs throughout the film, but throughout the whole entire movie, you're expecting something to be building up somewhere, but it builds up to the most anticlimactic payoff that I've ever seen in an action franchise. And this piece of shit tries to be clever with a lot of different, when it gets near the end, I was actually kind of on board with it, because my pros for the film or I'll get to my pros here in a little bit. What really kills this movie for me is I was actually getting into the story for the little bit that they were trying to do as far as tying up loose ends, and it feels like it was building up to somewhere, at least to a final closure. And I thought that's where the movie was going, but in the end, it ends on such a really it ends on such a downer that I really wanted to tear my fucking head off, because this ending they have really made it so unfucking watchable throughout the rest of the film that I was like, what was the point? Like, seriously, you watch the end of this movie and you're like, what? It ends on that level? Yeah, it's one of those kind of movies. I don't want to spoil what happens, but you watch and you're like, no, they can't fucking be serious. So, yeah, that right there ruins any redeeming qualities that I had with this piece of shit. Because the pros that I did have, I liked Milla Jovovich's performance. I thought, as Alice, I actually don't mind her, in all these films for what she's given. And I do like her as an action star. And two, I do like the Dr. Isaacs character played by Ian Glenn. I thought that they did add more depth to his character this time as a villain, and I enjoyed a lot of parts that were involved with him. And so every time he's on screen, I was like, all right, yeah, I'm on board with the movie, okay. And I actually didn't mind. There's at least one part that was getting to me when they come up with this twist that comes later in the film that I won't reveal, but it did get to me. But those two pros that I did have were fucking ruined by the ending. So that pretty much tosses that out of the way and makes the film pretty much unbearable for me. So out of the rest of the film, I know a lot of people hate the rest of the films, but this film, to me, ruins every one of the rest of them. Because to me, I actually don't mind the Resident Evil films as they went along. And, much like with the Saw series, I actually do want to see another one of what else they can do with the story. Because at this point, there's really nothing else you can do with the franchise. And I hear it's going to be rebooted in the future, but you know what? I actually wish they would make at least one more. Because this movie just pissed me off so bad that I felt like, what was the point of even building up to all this? If they're just gonna if it's not even gonna really end properly. Yeah. So yeah, I do not with the sheer redeeming qualities that I did have for the film, such as Milla Jovovich and the Dr. Isaacs character, even they couldn't save the film from this abomination they fucking tried to ruin with the ending that they had in mind. So with that, I'm going to give Resident Evil their final chapter a 2.5 out of 10. This movie is the worst of the franchise in my opinion, and you know what? If I ever do own it someday, I can at least watch some of the parts in the movie. But that's not saying much, because for all the shit that those other films people said were bad, those movies I found more entertaining and more on the invested with its story with. No matter how different it was from the games, I was still on board with the story. But here, not even comparing to the games, even as a film, this film fucking sucks. So with that, I really don't recommend this at all. And I just want to if you excuse me, I need to go find something to clear my head because I feel like I'm having a migraine just for talking about this. So yes, I do not recommend this at all. What did you guys think of Resident Evil, the final chapter? Comment below, and if you like what you see here, you can check out more of my reviews on my channel, and I'll be seeing you in my next review. I'll see you later.